For more on AI and security, we're going to bring in Derek Curry. He's an assistant professor at Northwestern University in Boston. Thank you and welcome to the show. Without getting into the gun debate, with what you just heard, does that preventative measure from AI and predictability and predicting what a potential crime could take place, do you think it will work?
Well, I think there's obvious advantages to using AI to detect guns. And one, you can monitor a lot of cameras all at once without having to employ people to sit there and watch them. But I think it creates another situation where if you're relying purely on AI to detect the presence of a gun, you could have situations where there's false positives. So, for example, machine vision systems have misrecognized 3D printed turtles as assault weapons. There's also been cases where a stockade of assault weapons was misidentified as a helicopter. So the question is, what happens when there are these false positives or misrecognitions, and how do people respond to them? And so you could very easily imagine a situation where police are told that there's somebody with a gun in a particular area, and they show up with that in mind, and they respond as if there's a real threat when it might have been a false positive.
Right, but couldn't there be a hybrid model? So let's just say that the camera sees something that is suspicious. Authorities get alerted to that instant replay, if you will. They look at it and they can make a human decision whether or not it is a threat or not, and they can decide to. It would at least save some time and increase the amount of time or decrease the amount of time that authorities should step in and prevent something terrible from happening, could it not?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's an appropriate use of a technology like this, is to detect things early on, but make sure that there's some sort of human verification and human decision making in the process.
We've seen in incidents past, especially when it comes to schools, that in the initial few moments, nobody's really sure what's happening. And by the time people know what's happening, we don't have the right people in the right place making the right decision. So it seems to me that decision making could also be quickened as well if there is additional time, so that we don't have situations where police officers or authorities are standing around trying to decide what to do while crime is happening literally at the exact same time.
Yeah, that's true, but I think it can go both ways. These systems sometimes make mistakes, and if people respond to those mistakes in certain ways, you could actually cause problems that you're trying to prevent.
The risks for AI and security, we have, which has been around for a little while, but facial recognition. And it's been greatly debated upon here, at least in the United States, whether or not we want to deploy that at airports and train stations and schools and things of that nature, where you identify an individual that may or may not be a threat on some list, and authorities would technically get alerted. I don't know if that's been deployed now. I have no idea, but I'm sure somebody in the security world is looking at this as a possible solution to prevent crime. Where do we stand on facial recognition today in this country?
Well, it's sort of a patchwork of different laws, and in most places in the United States, there's really no regulations. There are some municipalities like San Francisco who have passed local ordinances banning the use of facial recognition, largely because when you end up with a false positive, it can cause a lot of problems. There's other police departments like the New York Police Department that has come up with creative uses of facial recognition technology. So, for example, if they don't have a clear image of a suspect, they'll substitute forensic sketches or even pictures of celebrity doppelgangers. So there was an instance in New York where there was a man who robbed a convenience store. He stole beer from a convenience store, and they didn't have a good image. The image they had was from a CCTV, and it was grainy, but witnesses said he looked like a young Woody Harrelson. And so the police used a picture of Woody Harrelson, and they ended up apprehending the suspect that way. No, it worked in that instance, but using pictures of other people to try to find suspects is just, on the face of it, not a great idea.
Very quickly, where should the public stand on something like this? Because obviously there's a privacy issue here, along with a safety issue that we're trying to mitigate, and these discussions are happening in boardrooms, they're happening in school board rooms, they're happening at state legislative offices, and you don't often hear about it, but where do you think we go in the next couple of years with this?
Well, I think what we really need is for the public to have more technological literacies and better understandings of what these systems are and how they work. Most of the times they're black boxed, so we don't have access to the algorithm behind them, and so we're stuck with whatever the company wants to tell us about the accuracy of the product or how it works or any of the potential impacts that it has.
Yeah, ultimately we all want there to be less crime, more accountability, and I don't know how we get there, but maybe this is a first step. I suppose we'll see. Derek Curry, thank you very much for your analysis. Northeastern University joining us from Boston there. Next up.